Good evening. I've got everybody muted while folks are logging on. We'll wait for our chair and a quorum.
All right.
Hey, there's our chair.
Hey there.
How's it going?
Good. Here we are.
Here we are. There's 3 commissioners so far.
Okay. All right.
Oh, still makes 4. There you go. At least got a quorum. Hi, Sil.
So we're doing this then, I guess, huh? We got enough?
We do got enough. It is past 5:30.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and make with it then, I guess. Let me pull up the agenda. But if we want to start by anyone have any objections to the minutes? Or do we have anyone from the outside community there, Chris?
Charisse is on from the Wildfire Commission. There she is. Charisse, did you want to actually say anything, or you're just doing the commission connection?
Yeah, I've volunteered to be the permanent representative.
Right. Okay, just checking in to make sure. If you do want to say anything under public comment, of course, you're welcome to.
Thank you. I probably will in a future meeting.
Okay, great. I want to be wherever John is because it's actually snowing there. That cannot be anywhere around here.
No,
maybe Crater Lake.
It's my wishful thinking background.
Looks good. North Pole.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, so yeah, we were saying this is called the order. Did you start recording there, Chris? Or?
Oh, yeah, good reminder. Where are we? Recording. There we go. All right, so it's recording.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, and then you had an introduction to virtual meeting rules. Is that, you want to cover anything in specific? Or?
I think we pretty much got it at this point. Anybody from the public, and Charisse is a commissioner from another commission, but if there were true public on here, they have to stay muted and off of video so as not to be distracting to the rest of the commissioners. But I don't see anybody that's truly public. So I don't think there's any problem with that. And I'm happy to Nate, I sent out the minutes just a few minutes ago so you could pull them up for the minutes review. I can also just put them on screen.
Okay, or we could also put that off and have people be able to look it over before next meeting if we want to have any adjustments at that point. Potentially do that as well. Is that
not a whole lot to them, so
yeah, I mean they're there, so I would say I don't have any adjustments, but I haven't looked at them, so. I mean, with the minutes being in video form, I feel like it's easy to track.
Right.
Okay. All right. So without that, let's no public forum. Any adjustments on the agenda? They don't have anything else they wanted to shift around, or?
And Marty and I talked. I know he has got a time commitment issue for staying on the meeting. So if we could bump up item C under ongoing business, responses from Marty's presentation, our discussion last month, just make that the first item in ongoing business.
Perfect. And then John, you got something?
Yeah, so I would love in some meeting, I don't know if this is the appropriate meeting, to put on new business, a discussion specifically about adding and revising mountain bike trails on city lands that we cover. I know part of that's related to whether we even have jurisdiction for creating new trails, as we've talked about in the past. So, but it's something that I'd like to have this commission address if it's addressable, because it kind of ties into COVID-19 and really thinking about how we're going to diversify the economic base of the city away from only being a theater-driven tourism. And so I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have and just to see what it comes of it. So I don't know if that's appropriate for today or for later, but I'm open to everybody's opinions on that.
Just FYI, John, there was a meeting about that exact thing in the summertime that was put together by a broad coalition of
Stephen Sloan
people, right? Yeah, and I don't know where that's gone. So part of your, just maybe not necessarily for this discussion or even this commission, but just to satisfy your interest in that would be to track down where that has taken off to, if anywhere, because that seemed like the group that was going to make it happen if there was anybody.
Okay.
But certainly a worthwhile topic, if not.
Yeah, and so you're thinking of just a discussion item on an update on where that is?
Yeah, I would love to have a discussion item in new business. We could do, if we have extra 5 minutes today, I could sort of reiterate again my my interest in this in more detail.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would just say if it's about, you know, new trails and some of that stuff, I think the sort of the subgroup that we're breaking out that eventually might be sorting out more directly aligned with that. But I think that's totally appropriate to have a discussion. And if anyone wants to track down where that from the meeting that Chris was referring is kind of what direction they're going and what they're trying to do, it'd be fine. I think that's a totally appropriate update item. Other than that, I'm not sure, maybe that belongs in that same sort of subgroup discussion category.
Okay, why don't we say, I'll just talk to Stephen Sloan, who helped put that summer meeting together. I've asked him a couple times in the past and nothing was really going on, but I'll talk to him again, see if anything's going on, so I at least know that. Okay. And then we'll kind of wait and see, as far as jurisdiction-wise, whether it's even something appropriate for us to talk about.
Right, and I think either way, you know, us having discussion around that is totally appropriate, because then our subcommittee members would take what we are recommending and sort of, so I think it's an appropriate discussion item, as long as we're not getting bogged down with the intricacies of how to approve things, because that's what the whole idea of the subcommittee breakout is. But if you want to track that down, let them know we have an agenda item that we're going to discuss it, and so get yourself up to speed and present that to us. I think that's totally appropriate.
I'll put it up again next week.
Okay, and then I think, yeah, let's bump Marty up first, and then next month, let's have you give a little update if you want to wait till we have a little more information. And then, Sil, you had a question? You're on.
Well, I was going to add in about the discussion that John just brought up, but I think, yeah, if we capture it at a future meeting, I'll hold my comments till then.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's get it, Chris. If we can get that on the agenda for next month, that'd be great for a discussion, and then people can kind of gather their thoughts and get what information they want to bring in, and we can put a little agenda item on that. That seems good. Any other adjustments?
I just have a time constraint today that I have to be off at 7 for another meeting. So okay. I think we have plenty of time to finish.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we should be able to cruise. So great. That sounds good. Let's get Marty going.
I kind of put this one on just to kind of clean up from the last meeting where we didn't, have a full-fledged discussion on it. There was a pretty good discussion, and but a lot of really meaty information was presented by Marty, and then I kind of left it off saying that we want to go this direction of creating a climate adaptation document, which Marty and I have been talking about for a while. I just wanted to get the official comments and nod and or other direction from the commission on that. And folks seemed supportive. There were a couple of comments that came via email from Nate and Frank afterwards, good comments. But if anybody else had any other thoughts about moving that forward, Marty and I have been going back and forth about research papers, accumulating the science to date around that. I'm sure Marty's done even more work, maybe even some writing on it. We talked about an outline, so we're kind of moving down that road, which I think in the future would actually maybe re-engage isn't the right wording, but at least having known how the Forest Lands Commission interacted in the past with the Restoration 2 and 3 projects, which was really, really hands-on, and a lot of people put a lot of time into those documents, including some people here still on the commission. That I could see that happening again in the future with kind of a re-engagement on the technical forestry planning side with the commission, and which I think is an exciting prospect. I hope that you're all excited by that as well. Yeah, that's it. If there's any lingering comments from last time that anybody wanted to put out there.
Okay, I mean, I guess I'll just reiterate sort of the main points that I had kind of written down and then sent. And Marty, thank you for your response. And Chris, thank you for passing that on. I really appreciate you taking the time to look that over and just get back to me. I know it was a little bit of just sort of a monologue there, but it basically came down to, just sort of rethinking whether or not this landscape in particular that we're responsible for is it just completely choked down with the wrong types of species, and whether or not, slowly sort of re-landscaping it the way we've been doing it, which I think is totally reasonable. And I respect it, and it falls in line with a lot of how I feel about using too heavy of a hand and those types of things. And granted, we're still also trying to balance that this is a watershed and that there's a lot of other values at stake in it. But my questions basically came down to are we kid gloving the forest a little too much? Meaning, are we leaving too much of this Doug fir and some of those sunnier aspects, and now we're just stuck with an environment that's not super conducive for pine to reestablish because there's sort of so many and they're kind of sickly. And it's like, is it just, is there literature, is there data that shows, hey, if you can kind of you know, wipe some of that slate. Granted, you know, you're looking at 40, 50 years of it being not happy, but can you reestablish an appropriate pine sort of demographics on some of these slopes if we used a heavier hand versus sort of what we have been doing? And that's sort of what it came down to for me. It's like, I love the work we're doing in here, but it's like, is it just choked out with the Doug fir? And granted, you know, in the steeper sections of the draws and going up into the windburn, totally appropriate to have beautiful Doug fir stands. I mean, I'm not anti that, but that was sort of the question that I had lingering was, you know, are we worried to use a heavier hand because of, you know, the impact on the water and on the erosion, or are we worried for the, you know, the political or the, you know, the social responsibility of the public, or what is it? And would that potentially be something that would be advantageous for the actual species breakdown demographically? So that was sort of where I was, and I kind of went off on that, and Marty had some really good responses, which I appreciated, and I just that's sort of where my train of thought went off of that. So I just want to bring everyone up to speed, sort of where I'd gone. So there's that.
Is there an area, Nate, that you are referencing in particular, or is it generally applied to our whole footprint?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it basically comes down to, and what Marty did with the data, which was beautiful, was kind of show breakdown on, it was like he had it on the risk. I can't remember exactly how I did it, but it was basically on mortality rates and like predicting, hey, this is mortality rates increasing in these areas. And the way I interpreted that, looking at both what percentage of the slope and what aspect it was on, it kind of seemed predictable. It's like these ridge lines that are a little more exposed, obviously don't have as much confluence of water. So, you know, outside of the draws, seemingly don't have enough water. And I think moving forward, climate-wise, are going to continue to have less and less water in these confluences, outside of the confluences, excuse me. And those are the areas that, and, you know, lingering Doug fir pockets and stands, I think are just doomed, you know, and that's sort of the idea is, you know, these more exposed ridges and things like, you know, what would be the implementation to really get a true transfer of species demographics on them? What would be the most effective way to do that? Because I think long-term wise, allowing these big pockets of Doug fir, which we're not, because we're picking at them, we're thinning them, and we're piling them, and we're getting rid of some of the dead and down. I felt like, you know, what implementation method would be the best to establish, looking forward 50, 60 years, like an actual good pine stand. That's what it came down to.
Well, Nate, this is exactly something I brought up when we had that discussion last month, which is, if we know all this, should we do something about it? Sort of, in a nutshell.
Right. And you know, and it's not discounting the work we're doing. There's a lot happening for those areas in particular as well. I guess my caveat was, you know, heavier hand versus lighter hand. And, you know, I think in Ashland, the population is going to favor one over the other for sure. But is that just because we don't want to ruffle feathers? And, you know, and granted, I know that does destabilize the soil, and there's a lot of other components to this. And that's, Marty was really good with his responses, saying, you know, helping to reiterate those things. But I was curious, and obviously this is a you know, dynamic environment, so it's not black and white, and there's not yes or no. So it's, you know, using reason and following the data. But in seeing the data saying that the mortality rates here in these particular slope ranges and aspects are dying off, it's like, hey, should we just sort of promote that and try to really try to establish some different species. And that's kind of where that came from.
Marty, are you seeing examples of suppressed stands that aren't releasing? Like, is that kind of what Nate's getting at? Is Doug fir that have just been suppressed for so long that they're failing to release post-treatment?
I think, Marty, you have to
Yeah.
unmute yourself. But at some point,
There we
I
go.
have a comment.
Okay, sorry. Great comments on Nate's part. It was really made me think, Nate. So that was cool. You know, I had to kind of go back over it. Doesn't lend itself to an easy, short answer, of course, and it shouldn't. A few generalizations. Our ownership is primarily, as you guys know, it's north trending. So we really only have a handful of units that are traditionally pine sites, you know, really pine sites. And on those, if you look by the unit-to-unit data, we have been pretty aggressive in those areas. Our basal areas are really down. We've done a lot of burning and really tried to promote pine, and we've planted pine. So, so that's just kind of a general overarching perspective we've had. And overall, we've gone in the lower watershed. I think it was, we've decreased over time 25% basal area. And that's including growth and stuff that normally raises it. So we really have been, we've gone to from like 218 average down to, I think it was like 155 or 160, something like that. And that includes all sites. So I think what the question really, in doing this work, I realized how nuanced we had been as land managers and how important I thought that was. The question that you're raising is, can we be more aggressive? And should we? Well, in light of climate change, I think one of the most obvious conclusions in our work, and I think it was at the very end, was maybe the most important thing that we can do is do whatever it takes to maintain high vigor in our forests as much as possible. And so then it becomes a question, the species question really does raise itself up. Which sites can support healthy ponderosa pine, healthy Douglas fir, healthy madrone, so forth and so on. So I feel like we've been making headway that way. I think a lot of the question may come down to as good of analysis as we can make on how fast we have to do that. There should be relatively uniform agreement at this point that climate change is happening. And forests tend to respond to change slowly over time, incrementally. Hence our efforts to emulate the historic disturbance regime by doing frequent low severity disturbance, just as had been done for millennia prior. So that's been our strategy. Now we can choose to increase that, the intensity of those disturbances if we want, and there's some reasonable reasons why we'd want to do that. But back to the climate change thing is, how fast do we need to do that if we're going to do that? Big question. Do we need to accelerate? And then, of course, as managers, well, how do we do that? Let's say that we do choose to do that. At this point, we've done a lot of the non-commercial work. There's still some to be done, and Chris will talk about that, I think, a little later. But so then we're moving into larger tree sizes and commercial type activity. And then it becomes a management challenge and a budgetary challenge. So that overlay is not one we talked about much, but given all of our objectives, then we're pretty much into helicopter logging, helicopter thinning as the case would be. So I'm reiterating some of the things that we talked about in the report and that you raised and trying to respond. And of course there's more, but those are some of the, and you mentioned municipal watershed, erosive soils, recreation, and no question that we, at least initially, when we started from 1995 to 2004, we were under a lot of social pressure that we had to consider and respond to. And 2004, when we did that first helicopter thinning in the watershed, that kind of was testing the waters for our social acceptability. And we found that we pretty much had it. So after that point, then we were able to be a little more aggressive. And I mean, largely through the work of this commission, really. I mean, a bunch of people over time assessing and reassessing, you know, restoration 1, 2, 3, where are we at now? So I just kind of tried to capture your thoughts and respond a little bit there, Nate.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Luke, did that cover what you're asking? You're much more on the technical aspect. Go ahead, Luke.
Negative.
What? You said, what was that question, Luke?
No, oh no, I was just curious about it sounded, maybe I misunderstood you, Nate, but it sounded like you were asking if some of these stands were suppressed and weren't really releasing or gaining benefits from the, as you say, kid glove approach. So I was just curious to Marty if he's seeing examples where like trees have been suppressed for so long that they're just not releasing.
Yeah,
that wasn't really touched on.
No, sorry, I missed that one, Luke. Yeah, I mean, that report clearly indicated there were stands out there that have basically have gone away. They did not respond to thinning. And in fact, pretty good evidence, and really from 2010, some work that I did, it showed that post-thinning, we did not get release. In fact, in some cases, we went the other way, which is, you know, not thought to be very common amongst the profession, but if you have trees that are not well selected to the individual sites and are densities outside their historic range, you know, they're not capable of responding to the thinning. And we've actually seen that elsewhere in Southern Oregon now. So, but by and large, those stands have already run through that scenario. And at this point in time, I would say that we have much less of that than we did historically because of the work we did. And then one of the conclusions that I tentatively arrived at is that we, not only on city ownership, but throughout the interface, we're not getting the level of mortality that we had from 1989 through 2004. It's slowed down in Douglas fir, and largely, I think, due to reductions in density, insect related and management related across multiple ownerships, and particularly the city. So I don't think we have as much of that as we did historically when we first got started. That being said, some sites, particularly by elevation and topography, are currently, I'm real confident they will respond to thinning, and others, lower elevations, tougher to imagine. So again, it's a really nuanced approach, much more nuanced than you see in most management strategies. And we have that steep environmental gradient, you know, that in precipitation and temperature that really, really forces our hand. You know, so that makes it very interesting, but it does make it challenging too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marty.
Syl had her hand up a while ago.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I didn't send any comments via email, but the few things that came to my mind was that what you just pointed out, Marty, of how much of our watershed is north-facing slopes, and I think that's significant, and so what makes me wonder then is there's certainly other places in you know, in Oregon and Northern California that have similar ecosystems that I'd be interested to see what was happening there. And then that made me think of that you did a remarkable amount of research that I think would be valuable to the Forest Service Research Station, either Pacific Southwest Region Research or Pacific Northwest Region Research. They might appreciate a copy of that report. And conversely then, that might kind of kickstart, maybe they would be interested in coming to our watershed and doing some research here that would further help us with some decisions, and there could be some back and forth going there. And, you know, and maybe we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe there's other places that are having these, the same experience and similar ecosystems and aspect and all that. And so that's what I would suggest, is get some back and forth going. At the very least, they might appreciate it, and maybe even it would come back and there'd be some research that they are doing or will do that could help us.
That's a great comment. Yeah, I think the city's in a unique position here with their ownership. Again, seems like the city's been in a unique position for a long time in a lot of ways, but having all this data that we have, collect 3 different inventory cycles, and in a real steep environmental gradient, both for precipitation and temperature, has allowed us to really zone in on fine scale changes in sites producing differences in the vegetation, very fine scale. That's usually not picked up in most research. Most research is larger scale, you know, regional or, but our scale of reference was specific to our ownership, and very fine scale, very nuanced, slight changes in aspect, slight changes in topography, slight changes in elevation. So it makes it really interesting. And I agree. I think it'd be neat to involve some of the research community and on the kind of approach that we've taken.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, good comments. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, Frank's in the spirit.
Did he show his face? Is that, oh, there.
Yeah, with the Santa hat and everything.
Oh man, nice. Had to toggle down. Okay. We got other Shannon.
Yeah, just one follow-up to Syl's comment. I can't help but wonder if maybe PSW out of Reading might almost be a little closer in terms of you know, the kind of systems that they're working in. You know, we're way more like that than the rest of Oregon. We're you know, we're like Northern California. So just a thought.
You know,
And especially out of Reading.
one other thing that I've said it a number of times, but I think it's important that everybody consistently realize that we've had, throughout my tenure, we've had this consistent involvement of a whole lot of really good professional people on the Forest Lands Commission. Really, I mean, you just look at this current committee, look at the people on the screen. I mean, you're looking at years and years and years of professional experience. And simultaneously, we've had people that are just members of the public that kind of keep us professionals obvious, you know, keep us honest. It's been really good. So that's also unique, that longevity of consistent input on a relatively small forest, you know, so big plus there too. And I kind of agree with you, Shannon. We're closer in terms of our forest types and the issues we face to the PSW than the PNW, but used to be whoever would come. That's great. I don't care where you're from, Wisconsin, please come. Come take a look. It was so hard to get anybody, but we've had some, you know, we've had really good people come from the PNW, you know, the Jerry Franklins and the, you know, consistent, lot of interest. So whoever wants to come help and be involved would be great.
Well, and you know, for what it's worth, I guess they really are starting to look at forest plan revision for the Northwest Forest Plans, and the Rogue Siskiyou is going to be lumped in with you know, the Klamath and the Klamath and maybe the Six Rivers. I forget the exact grouping, but anyway.
That's interesting.
It's going to be lumped in with the Northern California Northwest Plan Forest.
Well, that's great.
Revision. Blue's a nice color, but don't hold your breath before it comes.
Looks like we got one more comment. Go ahead, and then we're unless there's anything dying after this one, we'll move forward. But go ahead.
I wanted to know whether it's appropriate to share a paper I wrote. I reviewed the Ashland Forest Plan and did a critique relative to climate smart strategies and principles. I wrote it up in June and delivered it to Tanya. She didn't respond, so I withheld submitting it. It was written for this council, or commission, I'm sorry, and the Climate Policy Commission. And I would like to know how to share this critique of the Ashland Forest Plan relative to climate change. What's the appropriate venue? Should I just email it to you? Should I give it to Chris?
Right, Chris. I think through Chris would be great, and I think we'd all appreciate an opportunity to be familiar with what you put down. And then I mean, I think that'd be totally appropriate to then have you back in and continue to have a discussion. I think it's valuable to have critiques. And I think, yeah, if you send it to Chris can forward it on to us really easily. And then we could be a little more familiar with it, and then put something on the agenda in the future for us to kind of have a good discussion.
That would be great. I'm also the lead facilitator for Southern Oregon Climate Smart Working Group. And we met today or yesterday and are trying to develop a climate smart primer for Southern Oregon, and are looking for case studies. And I have promoted the Ashland Watershed Project as a case study, which means that a lot of the conversation you're having right now with Marty's data would be showcased as one approach to evaluating change over time and responding to it. But I would love to have a conversation with this commission based on this report. I tried very hard not to make it professionally critical, because that's not the point. A lot of good work was done here. But the language of climate change, adaptation, conservation is not commonly used in Southern Oregon. This will introduce you to a more national approach or language. So I will send it to Chris and ask him to send it out.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, if there was anything else really lingering on the on Marty's report and sort of overall discussion, if not, let's move forward and let Hyde and Chris hit the next agenda.
Just one other thing. I really appreciated Nate's question and Frank's input. And if anybody else has some, email it through Chris or call me. That's great. I mean, a good comment, Luke. It's great. And Sil, Shannon.
I have one other question is, how can I get a copy of the report? And did you record your conversation, your presentation?
Yeah, everything is recorded on all commissions. So okay. I'll get the recording posted.
And the report?
And then, yeah, I'll load the report onto the commission webpage. And there's a series of links to documents in there. So I'll just stick it there.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on, Nate.
Yeah, so was that Parks, Forest Lands, it would be Minica, but it looks like Hyde stepping in.
Yeah, and I won't put Joe up to this one because I don't think he knows what's happening on this unless Michael Black maybe gave him a primer. But I haven't heard from Michael in a little bit on this because I know you guys have been busy over there in Parks. But so this is going back to the conversation that we initiated a couple months ago, kind of doing the evaluating responsibilities between commissions and between staff regarding trails and forest management and fuels reduction. And so I've encapsulated all that in an email to the city attorney asking for legal direction and how to go about it. I have not heard back from him on a couple of things, so he must be really busy also. But I expect between now and next meeting to hear back particularly direction on how to create an addendum to the memorandum of understanding between city and parks, where staff duties would be swapped more than the handshake that they are right now. And then if there's any need to change anything about the commission charters that would reflect what we've been talking about, I don't see that in the charters, but I leave it up to the city attorney to say whether or not what we're proposing is appropriate or if there's anything that needs to change. So I look forward to hearing back, but I don't have anything to report right now other than the request has been made and we'll see what happens. So sorry for it dragging out, but that's just the way it is. So to it.
Okay. So that if that does that for that was the ongoing business, that was Chris?
Yeah, that was the, well, if we switched Marty's to A, so this was B, now B,
Okay.
update on Park City and commission proposal.
Okay. So then following up with that would be the community smoke response plan, if
Yes.
that was it. Good.
So since last meeting, the city council heard our request for approval of the community smoke response plan, and it was a unanimous approval of that being, well, approved by the city, and then moved forward to a hearing with the county commission, which is going to happen December 15th, and then submittal to Oregon DEQ and ODF as the final plan for hopeful approval. And that's where it actually matters, in that if we get the exemption from the current 1 hour standard for smoke, we will have an increased opportunity to get burning done. And so I would say the earliest we could see that happen is probably like February. So that would benefit our late spring pile burning and into the spring underburn season, which we basically just lost our spring underburn season last year with COVID, or I mean in this current year, last season, spring season, which was appropriate. We didn't know what the impacts were going to be on people and smoke and COVID. That's a little, I think, more known now, but we'll see where our situation is with COVID once we get into the springtime, and if we're able to take advantage of having this exemption. But there's a lot of other good stuff in that smoke plan. I can send it out to everybody in its final-ish form right now, unless the county commission has any changes to it before it goes off to DEQ. Any questions on the smoke plan?
Doesn't look like it.
Awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
We're cruising.
All right. So yeah, we bumped that one up, and now we're at City and Parks treatment update, Chris.
All right, here we go again. Little slideshow here. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see. So the purpose of this is just to keep everybody up to speed on what's happening out there on city forest lands as far as treatments on the ground, as well, city and parks, I should say, because I've got some parks in here as well. Joe might have a couple of things to say about any of the work at Siskiyou Mountain Park. I haven't been up there except a little while ago, and there was still slash on the ground, but so I'll get to that in this, but I just want to make sure the commission's kind of up to speed on where we are with active management and where we're going with it in the next few months. So I will share this PowerPoint. Share. There we go. And hopefully it goes to full screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Slideshow from beginning. There we go. Does it look bigger now? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm starting with work that was done actually last year. So this is the lower Red Queen, what we've lovingly called the Barranca Unit, which is just another word for canyon in Spanish. But so this got treated. I've talked about it in the past. A lot of you have probably walked through it. The trail going up through the middle and then zigzagging down through the bottom is Red Queen. So if you start out at Terrace and Loop, Ashland Loop Road at the water tank and walk up, you'll walk through this, which was the area that was piled because of a lot of Doug fir mortality in there. Something that Marty covered in the mortality report. We got elected not to do thing in there many years ago. And lo and behold, most all the trees died. So we're trying to clean up a lot of the fuel left from that. And it's been an expensive, intense endeavor of only 3 acres, and we'll be probably $5,000 or $6,000 into this by the time we get all the burning done. So it's all piled and ready to go. And I have the burn permit from ODF as of today, and the smoke tonnage is all registered with the state smoke managers. So we should be able to, here's an example of one of the pictures I took of the piled material. So really atypical burn piles for used to seeing burn piles around the watershed or other places professionally. Lot of heavy material in these burn piles. It's the dead trees that have all fallen down over the years. And that's not even all of them. You can see there's still some that we left behind for soil retention and other wildlife values. But piled all that excessive fuel. And my original thought was that we would be there, as soon as it started raining and get this stuff burned so it didn't really get that wet. I wouldn't produce so much smoke. That didn't really turn out. And a theme I'll talk about with some of the other work as well, that because the fire season went so long into November, it did a couple of things. It pushed back burn season such that we didn't have a county open burn season in the fall. And I was wanting to do some of it during that 2-week window, but we didn't get that this year. And it also took away our workforce because there were still so many fires burning in the region. Even when fire season was declared done here in what's like the second week in November, first week in November, all the work capacity was still out of state or other fires up north. And so I couldn't have gotten anybody to burn these piles even if the weather was right. So lengthening fire seasons are having impacts beyond just more fires burning and burning bigger. It does kind of crimp our style as far as getting crews out there on the ground, and it shortens the work window on a yearly basis also. But so this 3 acres is ready to go. There's about 5 burn piles right down by the trailhead. That was part of a youth crew project. Those are going to get burned, along with a handful that are up a little bit further where there was mortality from the underburn we did a few years ago, the pine beetles. So there's probably 6 or 7 burn piles up there too. So we'll tackle all those maybe as soon as even the end of the week or next week if the weather does turn to wet like they're saying it will. So the next project is right above the water treatment plant. I've talked about this one also. Encompasses these units, which, sorry, Frank, they should have LWs in front of them. LW, lower watershed, K2, G3, and then G4 down toward the Forest Service boundary. So this unit here got treated. It's all cut and piled. And this one here got all done, cut and piled as well. I'll point out a couple of things that are different, that I think are different about these. They are fuels reduction units. They're not commercial treatments. They're on steeper slopes, so it was challenging. Had to go through special authorization from ODF to actually work in there. We couldn't cut anything on slopes over 70%. So it was a dance with the crew to get them to respect those areas and know what 70% looks like. Spent a lot of time out there with a clinometer, which was fun. I enjoyed that. So the difference in just my 1-page fuels prescription, I'll point out one thing. Number one, cutting Madrone up to 12 inches in diameter. So, oops, sorry. If that were a conifer, it would be well in the commercial range and we wouldn't do that. But Madrone not being commercial, yet Madrone taking up a lot of the stand basal area in those stands. If we're really interested in keeping conifers there and healthy, we're gonna have to really start cutting into Madrone basal area. They're water hogs, and it's not a place where we're gonna be able to do a commercial entry, probably because of the steepness and the treatment plant being right below it. That, along with another thing I'll point out, is near the bottom here, pile all pre-existing ground fuels, sound, not rotten, up to 8 inches in diameter. You don't see a lot of that in fuel prescriptions, and I think that that a lot of that has happened some of that has happened in AFR also, where we inherit this fuel load from the past. And when crews come in and they lay a bunch of green slash over the top of that ground fuel, they kind of forget about it and just get preoccupied with piling all the new slash and kind of forget to pile all the stuff that was there before. So I'm really trying to hammer on that when crews go in, they pick up anything that's sound and can be piled up to 8 inches. In that, that unit I just showed you with all the mortality, we went up to 16 inches, I think, or basically whatever was humanly possible to pick up. But this one didn't need that much, but still trying to make up the fuel load so that when we are done with the burning, we actually don't have an increased ground fuel load. I mean, we've benefited the stand clearly by reducing ladder fuels and reducing density for a healthier stand, but I don't like the idea that when we leave, there's actually more of the 10-hour and 100-hour fuels, which is like, 3/4 of an inch up to a couple of inches, 3 inches. So that smaller stuff all needs to get into piles, plus the stuff that was there before we even started cutting. All right, so that one is done. And has anybody, just a quick question, has anybody walked up? So that's the west side loop road, top of Granite Street. If you walk up through the yellow gate above the ferry ponds, that's that direction. Has anybody walked up there and seen it? Any reactions? I caught a couple of reactions just from public walking by and from some stuff that the crews passed on to me, that at least one woman was not very happy about the madrone being cut. And I can totally see that. There were some larger madrones on the ground.
I saw it and I liked it, but I like forestry operations, so maybe I'm biased.
I'll take that with a grain of salt.
Is any of it useful for firewood?
It is. There's a ton of awesome firewood in there, and I was crying big tears seeing it on the ground. And it is so steep down in there. There's no way out. Yeah, we would destroy the slope trying to move that firewood.
Oh, okay.
Is there any way we can help educate the public, Chris, about why the larger madrones were cut down? I mean, just hearing things like madrones are bigger water hogs, we're trying to bring back a more natural pine forest, things like that might be useful to somehow get out to the public. Yeah,
I agree. It's a bit of a challenge to get into that deep of a conversation about one species in a sign or something that you leave out there. It's
maybe just on the website or something like that.
Yeah, maybe that might be a good way to do it. Or maybe we just post something like, yeah. And I had similar questions on the next treatment, although the madrone that was cut in the next one is much smaller, but still people's reaction when they see a lot of madrones on the ground is similar no matter their size. Yeah, I thought a lot about that, John, of just, in AFR, we've had the resources and money to design some signs that go out. There were some out at Siskiyou Mountain Park recently with some of the work, and they'll be out again when Loma Katsi keeps going there. But just having something that at least says, hey, this is city forest land. These are treatments promoting forest health and reducing fire danger. These are your tax dollars at work. Whether you like it or not, at least who is responsible, and I'm happy to answer questions about it if people contact me. I don't know if I'm up for having my name on the sign, but maybe put a phone number or something, or a question, or to a website that would explain it in more depth. Thanks for those comments.
Cool.
Okay, moving on. So the bigger unit that we're working on, it's still in progress right now, is this big blue outline here. So the crisscrossy trails that you're looking at through the middle of this thing are a BTI trail coming down through the middle of this thing. And then, BTI is this one, sorry. And then this one is, not Jabberwocky. Jabberwocky is down here. This is, somebody help me. What's it? Bandersnatch.
Not Snark, is it?
No, Snark is goes out this way across the top. It's Bandersnatch. So if you walk Bandersnatch these days, you're gonna walk right through this work happening. And certainly bikers on BTI would see it, and along the top of Red Queen also, coming over to the junction at the top of the hill. So this is about 30 acres. This is all small madrone, up to 8 inches. There it is. Basically, we have grown quite a crop of madrone. It's like, yeah, or something out there. It was just unbelievably dense sprouts. This has all been cut at least twice before. Marty and crew cut it back in these various, it overlaps several city management units, but it was cut probably back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Was probably cut again during the helicopter sale, for those units that were in that project in 2004. And then maintenance was done in probably 2013-ish, 13, 14. I'll have to go back and look at the notes on that one, but it's about that time. So this is all, 6, 7, 8 years old. It just grows like gangbusters. And we will be cutting this like a rotation crop for now until eternity, which is a little bothersome to me, at least from a financial standpoint, that we're reinvesting in this over and over again. Just another example, some of them are getting bigger sizes, mixed in with some mortality. They were instructed not to cut any conifers at all. There is some Doug fir in there that could be thinned out, but it's so few and far in between, it wasn't worth having them try to figure that out. I might go back with a handsaw and lop some of it off. Don't get any ideas, Luke. I know you're eyeing that with your handsaw.
I actually just I've been running through that area, and it's impressive compared to what these pictures are showing. It's open. The views are phenomenal. It's beautiful. Very, very thorough. They really went after it. So nice work on that, Chris. Yeah, good. It was very, very dense and bad need of work. This is primarily the northern end where it was the worst. It does thin out quite a bit along Bandersnatch and BTI, kind of towards the other south end of this unit, but they've cut their way through pretty more than half of it now, but not that much is even piled yet. This is the one out there. Go, John.
Frank's got a question.
Oh, Frank. Sorry, I can't see very well in this view mode. Everybody.
Should unmute Frank.
I see Frank.
While Frank's got his getting the mute going, I had just a comment about I'll just go ahead and respond about the public. And I think, we had a really good tool for communicating to the public the, our field trips or our guided hikes. And, unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that. But I think that when we do, maybe that we could use these comments that Chris or any of us are getting from the public to help us inform where to go and what the theme of these hikes might be. And I think that still remains a really good tool. And maybe if we're even like planning it a little bit more, that we know like what activities are going to be happening, and we could be proactive with that communication in our field trips and hikes. I think this is just highlighting for me that a little bit more front loading on what we want to communicate would really increase the efficacy, I guess, of those hikes and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Go ahead, Frank. You got something?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Going back to the Madrone and the zillion stems that we got out there, I've suggested to Chris and Marty a couple of times another prescription that nobody's tried before. It's coppice forestry. And it seems to me that we've got plenty of places we can give it a go. And so I would like to suggest that as a formal approach. We need to change our prescriptions a little bit and try some stuff that's worked in other places in Southwest Oregon, but for whatever reason, we haven't tried it here, not in 20 years.
So Frank, are you talking about like culturing to, you know, 1 or 2 dominant stems and then, you know, letting them grow? Is that what you mean by copy?
You're going in the right direction. It's not so much the number of stems, it's the amount of crown that you leave behind, because you want to retard sprouting. And so it'll be partially thinning, it'll be partially thinning the rings. It's going to depend on the site, but it's something we just haven't tried before. And this looks like a good time to give it a run.
We actually did a lot of that in AFR, as well as even, we have this spot where we tried high stumping Madrone, thinking that maybe if they were 4 or 5 foot stumps that it would retard the basal sprouting. I haven't been back to that spot. I should go back there and see it. My experience is it defeats the purpose of trying to achieve density reduction. If we're trying to make more resources available for conifers and we have to leave a dense canopy of Madrone, we can't accomplish those things at the sime time. Ultimately, I think, you know, repeated treatments and a treatment with fire, which it would be, I would love to go back in and burn these stands if the trees are healthy enough to take it. That can knock them back further. And I have to say, and maybe this is bad juju, but at least a pilot project of herbicide just painted on the stump, not a foliar application or anything widespread, but just dabbing stumps. I mean, we'll be whether we do coppicing or whatever, we'll still be managing Madrone well until we're all dead here, and our kids and their kids. It'll go on forever, and it's just it's a bottomless pit of money to be cutting Madrone like this. So thinking about maybe an herbicide pilot project over like an acre, and you know, this is not in the municipal watershed, doesn't drain to Reeder Reservoir. Is it worth trying to see if it would work and monitoring any negative outcomes? Clearly herbicides are used across many thousands and thousands of acres of commercial forests. Not that everybody's in agreement about that, but otherwise there's no end to it. I've been watching one patch of Madrone just over the hill from here, or just above Morton Street. It's in an opening, and we've cut it 5 times probably. We've burned it once, and it is just still coming back gangbusters. Doesn't seem to be anything holding it back, but despite multiple cuttings and a burning.
Yeah, it's what you're saying. You know, it's different as you move further south, but what you're saying about the Madrone response is just completely contrary to my experience. And I've got 5 years of statistically analyzed monitoring data for over 200 Madrone stems that are not going along with what you're saying. I've also got a 15-year photo series I can show you these areas. And we may not be talking exactly the same apples and oranges here, because the idea is only to go in and do the thinning 1 or 2 times and then let the residual Madrone fight it out amongst themselves until the conifers actually shade out the residual Madrone. So we should have a longer discussion on this, because I think we're missing an opportunity here.
Great, I'd be happy to entertain any other option than just rotation cutting on Madrone.
Chris, what would it take to underburn areas like what we see in this picture? Is it just is the risk too high because of the homes nearby? Or I always thought that would be the follow-up prescription, would be to run some fire in there and burn it up, because it's typically cheaper than cutting and piling it, right?
Right. This is we got too far away from the ability to underburn in this stand, so it had to be reset. And my plan is, when this is done and gets burned in this spring, that we follow up with an underburn within 2 years. at the most. So we might let them grow, you know, one growing season, and so that we knock them back, let them expend some of their energy, and then hit them with fire pretty hard. Maybe not all of the areas that in this 30 acres are appropriate for underburning, either because of the overstory tree health and or just the slopes are too steep and it would be kind of tricky to get fire in there. But I don't think there's a lot holding us back. Certainly it's not adjacency to homes. We've done it even a lot closer to homes than this. So I'm not too worried about that part of it. Yeah, it's totally feasible. We will get to burning at least, I would say at least 75% of this area could be burned. All right, I'm gonna move on. A couple other examples, post cutting. There are piles there now, so if you walk out there, you will see piles that does look different. All right, one of the last bigger treatment that's going on, actually the biggest of all, and this is where Joe Hyde, if you want to chime in on this. This is a plan for thinning, doing maintenance thinning in Siskiyou Mountain Park. There's all this yellow on the map here is areas that we are proposing to fund thinning through our Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board grant, the last installment of this grant that we can use for thinning before the grant expires. So it seems like a really good investment. There's a lot of maintenance needed in Siskiyou Mountain Park. Jason and I and Lomakatsi walked this a couple different times and looked at different pieces of the park, walked all the ridges, came up the road from Timberline Terrace and came up here and just covered all the ground, and it is in really bad need of it. So this is a golden opportunity to spend some free money, free to us at least, although we're Oregon people, so we're paying for it in our, well, I suppose it's not even taxes, it's actually from the Oregon lottery. So if you play the lottery, you're paying for it. And it includes, so the only part that's been done is right along the Park Street entrance into the park. So if you walk up top of Park and keep going through the gate is here now, you'll see slash. And so Joe, I don't know, is the slash picked up there along the road yet? I know it was in progress.
Well, first of all, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
I always have a problem with the mute button too. So yeah, the idea of the slash on Park Street is for cost. I think we're going to go ahead and pick it up. We've got about 160 yards out of it, mostly manzanita out of there. So we just haul it to biomass. We got a 10-yarder and a 5-yarder. So we're about half done. So we probably another 160 or 70 yards of stuff to move out of there. So it is off the roads, doesn't really impact the trails and stuff up there. But can I make a comment on the Madrone Sprouts that you're talking about? Because we fight those too.
Yeah, sure.
When you're talking about herbicides, you know, we used to use herbicides quite a bit, and we don't anymore and haven't for several years. But the stump sprouts, especially on the Madrone, you know, we used to put it right on the stump on the cambium layer on the outside. And right now with Ashland Pond, you know, with the fire going through there, it really knocked the blackberries down, and now they're starting to come back up. And we can only use OMRI products, you know, organic, like citrus and vinegar and different mixes and stuff. We historically haven't had really good success with those with broadleaves, but we just have been talking lately about trying to use that on the blackberries, you know, like cut them and then use an OMRI product. And with you talking about the stumps, I think we should go ahead and test that too. Try to use some OMR products on some of the stumps around the cambium layer just to see how they come out. I don't know if it'll work or not, but I think it'd be worth a try.
Certainly worth a try. Thank you.
We've done a lot of testing on a lot of different weeds, but that's all I have for Siskiyou Mountain Park. We would have had that knocked out. Just side note, we kind of, our whole crew has been working in the Japanese garden. So that project's got started. So we're moving boulders and trails and things in the Japanese garden before the contractor gets in. So once, maybe about a week or so, we'll start pulling people off and start the hauling up there on Park Street again.
Great. Thank you. Frank?
Back to the Madrone Sprouts. There's a candidate unit right here in Siskiyou Mountain Park. It's about 3 to 5 acres. It's got about 750 stems per acre under 6 inches. And it would be a nice spot to try that coppice forestry. It's right above the white oak bench, if you know where that's at. And there's just a ridge line that goes up there. But it's a real good candidate for trying that treatment that I mentioned before. I've already got a preliminary prescription done in some acres and stem numbers. And so I'd like to submit that as part of the project, if there's money to do it. It's going to be probably $1,000 an acre by the time everything's done, because there's Scotch broom in there and you got to treat the activity fuels, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd like to offer that proposal.
Yeah, there's a treatment plan already in place, but they haven't cut outside of the trail corridor there, where we really emphasized pushing the brush back for fire access and for a fuel break if it's a very mild fire. They've gone into just this lower White Rabbit Trail area, kind of right above the road there, and just a little 1 day's work is all they've done there. So they've still got all the yellow area to do over the winter. So that's going to take a while. Frank, before we get to your area, it'll be a while. So yeah, maybe worth trying there. Then the other objective is stuff that's left behind has to be able to be underburned. And in my experience, Madrone doesn't take very well, especially young Madrone, to underburning. And that's the other problem, is going in and then running fire through it. We're just going to kill anything that we've left behind that's not big enough to take some fire, or that's worth actually clearing around the larger Madrones, which we've done a lot of pullback on Madrone. In fact, did that here in Siskiyou Mountain Park a few years ago, and it worked. And it's worked in other places on city land. But those are on 18, 24-inch and larger Madrones. We're not trying to preserve 8-inch Madrones by raking around them in a prescribed burn.
Yeah, we're in agreement on this. It's just some of the sizing and some of the things that have been done in there. McFarland was working on some places where he cleared out everything but the larger Madrone in one of the units out there, and that's working pretty well. So yeah, I'll send you some stuff on this. Maybe we can just chat about it a little more.
Yeah, that'd be great. I look forward to it.
Sure.
So that's the plan. They'll be chipping away at this and probably make a big push at some point in the next couple of months to try to get through a lot of these acres. And those are the obvious ridge lines where we have the best opportunities for fire management. So that's the places we're going first. And most all of these are previously treated, just going in there and doing maintenance. The little dots you see on there are photo points that Lomacazzi threw in. I'm not sure why so many of them ended up in a potentially untreated area. I thought that area I've walked through and I would like to see it treated. I'm not sure if we'll have enough budget to get into that section or not. But we'll be putting out some news about that, and just to let people know in the park what's going on as the work progresses. So that's all I got for what's going on in the field.
I got a question for you. Were there like sandwich boards or any information, for the people that are walking by seeing the work up there? Because that seems like one where there's some info up there for them.
Yeah, so we put out signs before the work started, just along the top of Park Street, along that purple section there. I don't know if they're still there or not, or if the crew took them down when they were done with the cutting. But as we keep going, we'll keep signs up there. And Lomacazzi is really good about one of the crew bosses is around and can talk to people if they have questions.
Yeah, that seems like a good way to really get the word out, because there's just so many people walk their dogs up there. It seems like a good opportunity to get the word out and have a lot of people see it.
Yeah, indeed. I talked to a couple people just walking around and scouting up there. So I know it does get a lot of traffic.
Hey, Chris, quick question. Hopefully this isn't too off this particular topic, but just curious if there's any talk going on already on what to do about the Ashland ponds after all the fires have destroyed there. There's such an opportunity to terraform the area.
Joe would know the most about that. I haven't really been involved in that at all. We did talk about it a little bit.
If it's a long answer, I know you've got to go by 7, so didn't mean to bring up something big, but
the bottom line, Loma Katsi has thrown their hat in. They'd like to have part of it. And then I'll say this wrong, but the Indian Nation tribes, I don't know the right name of that. They want to be involved and they have money. And so we have a lot of different groups that are coming in. And we went down and we cleared along the bike path, a couple hundred trees out that were burnt. We went in and we probably cut down 150 snags around the pond. And then we just got to a particular point. And again, we're all at the Japanese garden right now. So we stopped that project too.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of different groups that are asking. So we're going to come up with a plan, but we don't have one right now.
It's really amazing to see what's happened already. So you guys have done a tremendous amount of work, and just the seeding along the river's edge. It's pretty impressive. So
yeah, I think it's going to work out real nice. Like I said, it's just all that new land because the blackberries are gone. You know, it's real. We need to do something with it. You know, it looks great. Don't let them come back is what we're doing.
Yeah, we could build a whole pine forest down there now. So
yeah,
like we've always wanted to. So.
Yeah.
Well, I just had a quick question to follow up on that. I did see a lot of some of those oaks that you guys took off along the path, and you know, they needed to go. I was just curious. Is there any talk about letting some people do any salvaging off of just some of those big slabs of oak that are put down on the ground? Or
well, unfortunately, on our property, everything goes to along the bike path.
Yeah,
they took a bunch of oak down, and I can't speak for that because that's county doing that. But for us, anything we didn't take that many oak down.
Right,
they do pretty good. Yeah. But the ones we did we just take everything to the woodlot. You know, so it's just because of it's pretty political, and we just in the Japanese garden, some of the trees that we took down there, you know, it's like, you know, we'd like if woodworkers or something came up or the school, you know, would have asked, we would have went through the director, but we just take everything to the woodlot.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, no, you're right. I was referring to along the bike path, and I was thinking, man, it'd be cool to let just some artisans just come get it, you know, get it off. It's some beautiful oak.
We used to deliver wood, and to different situations, we would deliver wood, and we haven't done that probably for 10 years.
Okay.
Because everything goes to the woodlot.
Thanks, Joe.
Ryan had a question, I think.
Just back to the Ashland Ponds. Last meeting, I said there was a number of invasive plant populations out there. I counted them before the meeting today. We have 25 occurrences, and there may be more than one population in a unit. It doesn't say. It just says this species is present. This invasive plant species is present in a unit. So whatever comes out of that plan for the ponds, that's probably going to be a big piece of it. I'm done.
Nice, Frank. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know Jason mentioned the Loma Katsi was coming with a plan last meeting. They were talking about revamping that. So I imagine we're hearing a little bit more about that.
Yeah, there's a freshwater trust project in there too. I don't know the status of that.
Yeah, they were on the other side. They were on the other side, and but they also want a piece of this.
Yeah, I emailed with Eugene Weir, and he said that when they cut the blackberries pre-fire, those areas where they cut the blackberries, the other vegetation, the residual vegetation, kind of survived a little bit better than some of the other places. Is that your feeling?
Yes. Yes. And especially it was hot when the fire went down through there. It was hot, and as it passed through us and got onto the other properties, it really did a lot of damage. But where that restoration area did fare pretty well.
Great.
Not the pond area though. Not the pond area. And just a side note, we were just getting ready to put the a walking bridge so I could go into the pond area. And if you took a quick right, we were building a kind of a causeway down there. We just got the permits to do it, and kind of a long bridge to make it go around the other side so it didn't have to go along the homeowners. There's kind of a quasi easement that we've had a problem with. And so we were just getting to redirect that, and we lost all that too.
Okay, so I think last thing on the agenda, if we can just merge this into, if there's a trails update, that kind of as a perfect segue, that's sort of what we're talking about. That's the last thing on our agenda for ongoing. And I know we're trying to mind the clock. We got about 3-4 minutes. We give Chris a breather.
So the only thing on trails is just because of all the work that's going on, but we get a lot of really good positive feedback, and it hasn't really affected trail use. The one thing is Kevin from the city, project manager from the city, they've recently came to us on the Wonder Trail, and then everybody that goes up into that area. So they're going to replace a culvert and over by the ferry ponds. So the top of Lithia Park, you go just past the swimming hole to the right, and then it kind of cuts real quick where the culvert is and goes down to the Wonder Trail and then goes up to the other trails in 2060. They're going to block that off for a long time. What they've asked us if it's okay if they build a bridge across the creek right there. And there's some embankments there to build a bridge. And when we did the Wonder Trail, we were wanting to do something like that, but the entrance to it is kind of steep and goes down, and we're like, heck yes, we would love to have a bridge there. So now we're just talking, is it going to be a permanent bridge or a temporary bridge if something goes in? So we don't know. It's still in the planning stage, but it's possible we put a bridge there and then start the Wonder right there. And then if anybody goes up to 2060, they would take that bridge too. Okay, and that would be slightly down creek, like more alongside the parking area there, that long one? Yes, it would, the long parking lot on the left, it would actually be just a hair before that. Oh, cool. Yeah, way before that. Yeah, actually, even before that. What would be nice about that is then, we'd still skirt the proposed new water treatment facility on one side, but at least we wouldn't cut underneath them and then go up, so. That'd be really cool. We would like to keep it. I mean, in general, right now, without, it's still early, but it would be something if it cost a few more, it's a possibility, but we don't know. Yeah, it'd be cool. Well, thanks, Joe. Appreciate the update and stepping in on this meeting with us. And I think that's going to do it. So, Chris, if we can adjourn this thing at 6:57, you get to your next meeting, and we'll see everyone next month.
Appreciate that. Thank you, everybody. Have happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Stay healthy.
Yes. Yeah. Good to see everybody. See you next year.
See you next year.
Absolutely. We'll talk about who's chair next time.
See you guys. Take care.
Be well.